Okay. Good morning, everybody. Today we are going to talk about publication and conference preparedness, how we are going to prepare ourselves with for publication and conferences. And this is the second POD series on professional development. We started out in February on grant writing, which was amazing. We had a great response and wonderful people coming and telling us about grant writing. And today we are covering on how to write an abstract for a professional meeting, or what are the requirements, what are the different types of publications, and why, as an extension agent or extension professional, we should be thinking about publishing or any scholarly activities. And in April, we will do a session on curriculum development. Again, all these sessions are open to all new, old, existing faculty, staff, whoever is interested to learn these topics can join in. And we will conclude on June 1st on evaluation and assessment session. So now we will focus more on what we are doing today on publication and conference preparedness. And as you see this nice flyer designed by Susan Barnes, we have wonderful people joining us, and they are going to cover different aspects of the preparation for publication and conferences. So here is the format, what we are going to do today with a little bit of timeline. I will cover the conference preparedness in half an hour, which would include call for abstracts, to walking you through from that stage until you make your presentation or write an abstract. And then another half an hour will be taken by Mr. Andrew Kling. He is the managing editor for UME Journal. So he's going to cover different types of publications and how to prepare yourself for that. And we have a wonderful testimonial session where I will expand in a bit on how it is going to look like. And at the end, we will open it for Q&A. But if you have any questions that you cannot wait or you would forget in between, please feel free to put that in the chat and we will cover that towards the end. In the testimonial sections, we have Amanda, Jennifer, Kathy, Vernell, and Razan, and they are talking about different types of publications and attending conferences, and they will themselves introduce their own and show their work as an example, and most importantly, talk about being an extension agent, what it means to do that scholarly work and bring that out from all of your daily life and daily work. And they would also, inspire us by giving some nice messages on how we should be proceeding. Okay, with that, let me focus on conference preparedness. And this is a disclaimer in the beginning that this presentation is not always applicable to all the conferences or the types of conferences or the types of role that you would be playing in a conference. But I have tried bringing all the aspects that is possible in a conference to one place to show you that these are some of the parts and pieces, and we probably need to pay attention to some of the things that we probably haven't been doing. So with that, here are some of the stages of a conference. So we find call for abstracts, or we already know as part of our work, part of our job, or part of our situatedness in a university college, that we are going to attend some of the conferences, or this is important for our professional development, professional life. So that's why call of abstracts is very important. We look out for that when it is going to come this year and how we would prepare for that. And then the most important thing in that call is the due date to submit your abstract. We will know that we need to submit by this date, and you work your schedule out to submit by that date. Then we will be communicated about the acceptance of our abstract. And then we, of course, have the conference schedule, and we would see where we are scheduled on which day of the conferences and all that preparation that is needed. And we register for that, and always pay attention to the details in the call for abstract on what they need us to do. Sometimes we are familiar with one conference and would probably think that this is the same format for every other conference, but no, sometimes it changes. In cases there are 500 words for an abstract, somewhere it is 100, and sometimes it's 250. So we cannot write 500 for every kind of conference. Then they have so many other details like font size or any other factors. For example, can you keep graphics or do not keep graphics? And some conferences, they publish their abstract where they need more details, and somewhere they don't. So that again differs from one to the other. I just wanted to show you an example visual. Things are very important. And as you can see, here is a call for abstract for the National Association of Extension 4-H Youth Development Professionals. It's a bit mouthful, but this is a wonderful conference for 4-H. And as you can see in the announcements, we have the dates where the conference is happening. And they are calling for the abstract reviewers. They're calling for the abstracts, and they have different stages for that. So these announcement details everything that is related to this particular conference that if we are interested, should be reading and preparing ourselves for that. So when we think of a conference, we think of different roles or different participation types. For example, if we are just going as an attendee and we do not have any other role to play, we are basically going to check that out, have our social networking, see what's going on, and prepare ourselves for the next year, let's say to deliver a lecture there or be a part of the agenda. So that is one type of role that we play sometimes. Another times we could be a presenter. We can be talking or orally presenting or a slide presentation and all, but it could also be a poster. People are into the poster sessions where you have a poster and you're standing there. People stop by, ask you questions, and try to know more about it. We could be a group member when there is a big group that is representing our institution, organization is going to attend a particular conference, and we are a part of that. We are a group member in that scenario. Or there are invited speakers. We do have quite a bit of renowned people, those who get called, they invited to speak at different places, different organizations, institutions, and conferences. For example, Dr. Jeff Howard, he always probably have couple of invited speaking arrangements every month, I must say that. So that way you are pretty renowned and people are looking out to get tips from you, to hear you on different subject matters or what you are very popular about. You could be a guest speaker, keynote, or plenary. These are again different types of designations given what kind of conference you're attending. You could be a panel member. When people are putting together a panel, they are bringing experts in that particular area and then trying to see what is coming out of it. It's more like to create that awareness among people, or to share your ideas, or have that exchange of knowledge between attendees and the panel members. And sometimes you could be a reviewer. You are probably attending, but you reviewed the abstracts for that conference, or contributed in that way as well. So we have different types of roles and participations that people go for a conference. And these are just some of those. We can have more than this as well. Here comes the next phase. What is the structure of an abstract? What do we include typically in an abstract when we are putting that for a conference, or sometimes even for a publications? But again, I'm not going way away to the publications section as yet, because we have wonderful people to cover that. And these in nutshell are what are there on an abstract. We have the title, author, affiliations, keywords. Those are briefs. Those I will just go through like that. But then we have the main abstract that has different components. And once again, depending on what kind of conference we are attending, we will find some or all of these components of an abstract writing. So title, normally it could be concise, very clear, and it represents your content very well. I just wanted to bring an example on a conference presentation that Dr. Howard and myself did last year in December. So this was our title: Designing a Diverse and Inclusive New Program and Organizational Development Unit with Impacts in Mind. So that clearly tells people, the audience, what our goal is, what is the motivating factor, what basically we are doing. So being a reviewer, when the title is very big or very small or does not represent well, that actually creates quite a bit of confusion. So the goal is always to be clear and concise and still represent what you are up to for in that presentation. Author affiliation, of course, pretty straightforward. I just put all three of us that work for POD here. Dacia, she is the new coordinator, just joined in February 27, and you guys have been interacting and would do more since she is the IRB liaison now. So that is pretty straightforward. I'm going to skip that part. And then comes to the keywords. And normally people ask you to provide up to 5, or sometimes it's 10, sometimes 3. These keywords are basically used for different aspects. Sometimes if it is online, you can search using keywords on what kind of presentations or work is existing in that particular area. So keywords are used for that purpose. And we use these keywords for our presentation. So I have just included those here. But it could go, way beyond 5 sometimes if the requirement is there. Okay, now let's move on to the abstract and talk about what we include in an abstract. So as I have already shared that we have introduction or theoretical framework or literature review, that is one section. Some conferences give you exact word limit or even character limit these days on how much you should be spending on introduction and that part. Then we have research questions or study objectives, or why or what questions we are answering in that part. Then we also talk about methods and data sources. And I'm going to go into the details of each of these components. Then we also have results, products, and conclusions. And then recommendations or educational importance, or what are the implications or the impact, as in extension it is very familiar on what's our impact or how our work can be applied somewhere else. And then finally the references. And in the introduction and theoretical framework or literature review, we are basically setting up our story. We are telling people right away what we are all about, what our work represents, why we are doing that. That goes on in the introduction part. And literature review, we all do literature review when we do any kind of work, because we also want to see if we have like-minded people, if that work has already been done, and we are not going to reinvent wheels all the time. So we need to have some literature backing our theory, what we are thinking, or what we are planning on doing. So this is very important. And oftentimes I have seen people do not use credible sources, which is not something acceptable to the standard scholarly work, as I can say. So literature review is mostly using credible sources. If we are using Wikipedia and is an article, which is a blog, published, not published, it's somebody's personal thing that they have mentioned about, those are probably not credible. So we need to look for credible sources. Once I remember somebody just giving me out of Wikipedia, and I was like, Wikipedia is probably not a credible source. I can change that, somebody else can. So we need to have literature that is backed by, again, a scholarly work. So that is very important here. And again, as a reviewer, when I go through all the abstract, this is the section which generates quite of interest among people. And that entirely, again, decides on whether your abstract is getting accepted or not accepted, because that particular section gives the whole tone and sets up your story for others to be really curious to know more, really would like to know more and follow up on your work and those kind of things. So this part is very important. Not to say that other parts are not. So let's move on. On research questions or objectives, that would be very clear and focused on what are the questions we are asking and why we are asking and what we are expecting the answers to be, or what we are doing towards getting those answers. So research questions, again, are very clear, and what the writer needs to do or what you need to do for your work. And it shouldn't be too broad or too narrow. It will have an appropriate scope. It is not like, oh, you keep on writing, or just write a very short sentence on your research questions. Then that does not give enough information to the reviewer or to the audience on what exactly your objective or question is. And if you can stay towards the analytical side rather than the descriptive side, that would be wonderful. So it should allow you to produce an analysis of an issue or problem rather than simply describe it. If you simply describe an issue, it's a question, but you are not thinking of how analytically you are going to resolve the problem, then it's probably not a research question or study objective. Moving on, methods or data sources. There are so many types of methods, and depending on what kind of work you do, that decides on what method you would be choosing. If you're doing a lab work, you have entirely different setup than if you are doing a human subject work. So, for example, in human subjects, which most of us do, is qualitative, could be quantitative. So in qualitative, we have interviews, focus groups, you have ethnographic studies, and so many varieties. Similarly, in quantitative, you have surveys and other types of um, resources or methods that you can use. And sometimes we use both because we realize that given a research question, we cannot do it just by qualitative or quantitative. We need to have both. So then you go for mixed, or you can do meta-analysis or just review what is existing, what you should be doing, or what theoretically is possible to do. So there could be different types of methods that we use for our research or scholarly work. And results, products, and conclusion. When we did the study, we had our research questions, and then we were like talking about results. So this is the question, this is the method we used, and this is where we generate all our results. It could be statistical analysis. We can use some data visualization tools, and we would again go back to the literature that we started out with and try to see how much our work is contributing to the new knowledge, contributing to the existing knowledge. And we are creating something new, or how we can make a difference, what impacts or trends we can see here, given our work that we have done. I have used two of these. I didn't want to bring it from somewhere else, so I have used two of the data visualization in my own paper that I have published. One is on artificial intelligence and machine learning, and how different ethical issues come out when we use artificial intelligence in our work. And the other one is the collaboration or interdisciplinary collaboration in a particular research area. So these are two of the visualizations that I got, and these are entirely different, and different types of statistical analysis packages were used to generate these kind of graphs. So moving on, then after all our work, we are providing the policy suggestions. We are letting people know that our work has some implications. This can be applied in other places. And we provide recommendations, or we come up with the impact and educational importance. I have gone to this county or this particular community and delivered programs for a while, and this is the result I see today. And based on my result, I'm going to suggest that these kind of programs can be scaled up in different parts of the state and beyond. So this is where we provide the educational importance and recommendations for future work. And we also include references. Sometimes they tell us what kind of styles they would like to prefer, or they prefer for that particular call. It could be APA, MLA, Chicago, different styles. And we go for both in text and end of the content. So the first one example is in text, where you write, if there are multiple authors, you write the last name of first author, et al., and the year. And the references, the end of the content, we have the published paper that we published recently, and you can see it is in APA style. Okay, With that, I just wanted to give you a little more information on some do's and don'ts in a presentation. So when we go to a conference, time management is the most important aspect. And for that matter, any presentation that you make. If you are given 15 minutes and then you have 10 minutes presentations, 5 minutes Q&A, you would like to stick to that timeline. Sometimes it goes way beyond and people would be like, oh, the next person is getting stressed out, or this time is going away from me and all that. Things happen. So time management is a very, very important aspect. And formal language in that area, most of the time when we talk informally, we use different types of language that we should be using. We should be using in a formal setting. So let's say kinda or lol or something like that. Those are not formal languages. We understand what it means, but for presentation, we use formal languages. And always it's a great idea to practice, practice, and practice, because if you practice a lot more, then you are perfect when you are presenting something. And bring humor that people would like to see and would remember more than if you talk in a very, robust voice without any humor and all that. Just kidding. But that is something that people take away with them from any conference presentation. And don'ts, there is a very long list, but I just chose to put all these important ones. Do not clutter your presentation. I have seen presentations in a slide where they do not leave any inch of that slide for word or picture or whatever. So that is going to really, people were just, off from that presentation. They do not would like to continue seeing that. That is not just human attention that can garner that. And rushing through your presentation. You were given 15 minutes, but then you want to cover about 20 minutes or 50 minutes of worth, and you were trying to rush through your presentation. And that actually impacts the audience. They also feel stressed that, oh, somebody is rushing, they're trying to finish all that. We probably cannot do justice to all the things that we have to say. So we probably need to focus quite a bit on the time and do a justice to that time. Using filler words. Have you heard people saying, you know? So those kind of are filler words. Some people have that and it distracts a lot. And if you see some people, I would give you an example. What's coming immediately to my mind is Mr. Graham Binder. If you have ever heard him say things, you would see that he does not use filler words ever. I have never heard him use that. It's always straightforward. So it's a pleasure to hear that, okay, a very clear, concise, without any filler words, he conveys his message, which is brilliant. And I would like to, be like him one day when you do not use any filler word at all. And do not use jargons. There are audiences where they come from different type of background, professional background, as well as educational. So if we think something is really that we use in our area, is very commonly used, but then sometimes it is not the case for other areas. So we try to cut on jargons. And wander off. Do not wander off. You stay focused on your topic and do a justice to that. So with that, I just wanted to show you the example of how the cluttered look of a presentation is. And to your right is what the clear, concise, and a presentation of that same thing is. And then you can speak more. With that, I would like to say that we have 2 more sessions in this series. one is curriculum development, and the June one is evaluation and assessment. With that, thank you so much for listening, and I will hand this over to Andrew now. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Deb. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, how does that look?
Great.
Okay. Deb's asked me to talk a little bit about publications. And once again, my name is Andrew Kling. I'm the managing editor for UME Fast Track. And what I like to talk about is a number of different types of publications that you may be interested in exploring. And I see this as sort of a continuum between these three types: newsletters, publications, and professional journals. And the question then is, what's the difference between the three? Well, we're blessed with UME. We have a variety of newsletters from different programs. One of the other hats I wear is as the writer and editor for the Branching Out newsletter for the Woodland Stewardship Education Program. And I'm always interested in hearing new ideas about topics for articles. And writing for a newsletter is going to be different from for a formal publication for a number of different reasons. One is you're going to be looking at something that's fairly informal, something that's generally not shared outside of a particular community. And you're also going to be giving a look at probably a fairly small topic. Now, it doesn't always work that way, but writing for newsletters is a great way to get some writing experience. If you haven't written in a long time, you haven't written since college, or hopefully not since grade school or term papers, hopefully you've done some writing since then. It's a great way to learn how to tailor your writing for a specific audience. Think about this. Each of these newsletters can be addressing a particular population, but in some cases there's crossover. Say your neighbor is a dairy farmer, and the head of the household is a woman. So you may want to think about writing an article about their dairy for Maryland Milk Moose, or maybe for Mid-Atlantic Women in Agriculture. It all depends on who your target audience is. And that's when working with the editor comes in handy, because you reach out to them and say, hey, I've got this idea. They're going to say, okay, here's our target audience. What do you want to talk about? Gives you length limits and gives you a variety of things to think about as you get started. The next in the continuum are UME publications. Now, before we talk about UME publications, let's talk about the system we use called Fast Track. Fast Track is a software system that brings together all sorts of information for you, the author, for me, the editor, and for your reviewers. And we're going to talk about them in just a minute. All the information that you put in there, you get to see as the editing process and the review process goes on. You get to track what I'm doing, get to track what your reviewers are doing as well. When I'm talking about reviewers, let's talk about the peer review process that we go through, which is a little different from professional journals. We'll talk about that later on. All of our UME documents go through the peer review process through publication. The difference here is that you as an author or a group of authors get to pick who is your actual peer review team. We ask you to select 3 people, 1 in-house, UME or UMD, and 2 from outside. They don't have to be from academia. They can be from a nonprofit group. They can be from a community group. They can be from private industry. It all depends on your topic. As long as you think that they can give you an honest assessment of your writing, they can be a good nominee for reviewer. And again, this is your responsibility as an author. Now with UME, we've got 7 different designations, 7 different types of publications. And I want to go through each of these real briefly. The shortest one is the extension brief, oddly enough, short and to the point, 2 to 3 pages on one topic. This is one we brought out last year from Andy Lazar, top things to know about septic systems. He went through 5 different things you need to know, writing for a general audience about septic systems. Bing, bang, boom, nice and short and to the point, and got it published. The next one in size is the fact sheet. And we often get people who write to us and say, I'm interested in putting together a fact sheet. And they use that as a general term for any UME publication. Fact sheet is a specific type. It's generally 3 to 12 pages. It still is covering one topic, but it goes into more depth. And it's a great opportunity for graphics. Now, we talked about Andy Lazar's septic system extension brief. That's for a relatively general audience, homeowners with septic systems. This one from Dr. Farku and her colleagues is for a very specific audience, for apple orchard growers, apple orchard managers. Now, I've been eating apples all my life. We had an apple tree in my backyard when I was growing up. And basically, if I saw an apple with a brown spot on it, I thought it was a bruise. One of the things I love about this job as UME editor is I get to learn about all sorts of different things, including 9 physiological disorders in apples. I had no idea, but this is something that is very important to apple orchard growers. So this content is very important for a specific audience. And it gives you in the fact sheet a greater opportunity to share graphics. She had wonderful photos that she shared of each of these physiological disorders. Going up in size is the extension bulletin. These are longer. This is one that was put out last year or year before by Jonathan Kays and Gary Felton, and talked about research that they had done over a number of years on this particular topic. And this particular bulletin goes on for quite a few pages, certainly much more than any fact sheet would. It goes on to more than 40 pages. And you can approach extension bulletins in 2 ways. One, as they did here, in one particular topic, sharing your research, sharing your data, sharing your recommendations. Or you can use it as sort of like a book with inside chapters. And this came up just the other day. An author wrote to me and said, we're developing 3 fact sheets on a overall topic of rainwater preservation. And we're looking at doing 3 fact sheets within this. Do we want to put this through one review process, or do we want to send them out as separate fact sheets? And I said, well, there's pros and cons for both. If you want to make it as one publication, one extension bulletin, and you want to send it out for only one review process, then your fact sheets are going to be something like chapters in a book. And so if someone is interested in building a rain barrel and they go to the UME website and type in rain barrels, they're going to get the entire document rather than just the chapter if you did it as a fact sheet. So there's pros and cons to the extension bulletin format, putting it as fact sheets. So it all depends on how you want to approach it. Next is the extension manual. Now, you may remember back when the pandemic started, we were using WebEx for our presentations online. And then we got access to Zoom. How many of us knew how to use Zoom? Not many. And so the authors put together this wonderful guide to show everybody how to do it with visual hints. It's a technical guide on a specific topic or program. The largest one in terms of length that we have is the extension curriculum. Some of these we have over 200 pages. This one is from a curriculum that we brought out last year called Ag Experience. It's designed for educators to expose their students to careers in agriculture. And it usually has some background information on the careers and usually has lesson plans that go into that so that the educators can pick and choose and say, okay, my students are interested in this or my students are interested in that activity. And those are often, I don't want to say restricted in content when it comes to the website, but the authors usually want to make sure that they know who's actually getting them. So rather than publishing the entire thing, they'll publish a tease of it on the website with the intention that the individuals who are interested will go and ask them for access to the entire content. Now, as I said, extension curriculum documents, publications are made up of lesson plans. You can also submit a lesson plan, and I would love to show you this as an example, but we haven't had one in quite a while. So think about this as the possibility of a style test or a trial balloon. You have a topic in mind that you might want to build into an extension curriculum, but you want to test a few things first. So create a lesson plan, submit that for publication, get some feedback on that, and then maybe another one, get some more feedback on that. And then eventually you can put it into an extension curriculum. But as I said, I don't have one to show you here. I hope to have this one to show you fairly soon. This one is the web-based format, and it's going to be coming out hopefully later this spring or early in the summer, a beginner's guide to citizen science through birding. And I'm really looking forward to this one because the author did a great job in putting together multimedia, website access, videos, quizzes, video and sound. So I'm really looking forward to this one coming out. So here they are again: extension brief, fact sheet, extension bulletin, manual, curriculum, lesson plan, and web-based. Now, before you start writing about any of these, there are a few things you need to know. First thing is, let me recommend that you go to the POD website, go to go.umd.edu/publications process. There we've put together a 6-part wiki that goes into much more detail than what I can do here, talking about things that I look for in the editing process, things that will help you manage your Fast Track account, how to sign up for a Fast Track account, and how to deal with graphics, and all sorts of interesting information, or at least we hope it's interesting information, stuff that you'll need to know through the publication process. Now, Deb shared some do's and don'ts, and she asked me to share some do's and don'ts. And frankly, when I started playing around with ideas for this, I started looking at graphics, and everything is green and red, do's and don'ts. And I said, I don't want to do don'ts in red because most of these don'ts aren't hard and fast, but they are time tested. So I'm going to do green and orange. So as you're starting to write your extension publication, or any publication really, you need to make sure you know who your audience is. Are you writing for a general audience, property owners who have a septic system, or are you writing for something more concentrated, like apple orchard growers? You need to know and identify your target audience in the draft, because really you can't assume that I'm going to know that it's obvious. An editor once said to me, if I can't figure it out, your readers aren't going to be able to figure it out. Make sure you know who that is and identify them early on. Don't feel that you need to do this all by yourself. We certainly have authors who are willing to tackle a subject on their own. But extension publications and publications in general are a great way to collaborate with other people, other faculty members, other grad students, outside groups, members of outside groups, friends groups, community groups. But the challenge there is to make sure that the draft that you send has a consistent voice. It's a great way to work as a team to say, okay, I'm going to write section 1 and section 3. Charlie, you get to do section 2 and 5, and Cindy, will you do section 6? All of that is wonderful. It's a great way to divide labor, and it's a great way to get Charlie and Cindy to share their expertise. But we need to make sure that the draft has a consistent voice, a consistent style throughout. What'll happen is that I'm reading along as the editor, and I get used to a particular person's writing style, and then the style changes with the section break. It can be quite obvious, it can be subtle, but you want to make sure that as you're doing this as a team member, as a team, that one team member is responsible for crafting the draft language that is consistent all the way through. We heartily encourage you to use photos and graphics and maps and illustrations. Please don't leave it to us to do. And in that POD wiki, you'll find a variety of resources to explore, not just UME and UMD resources, but outside sources like Pixabay, great sources of photography out there, and graphics as well. And if you've generated illustrations and data sets from your research, share them as well. And there are certain caveats for them that we can talk about once the publication process gets started. And if you take away nothing from what I have to say today, please take away this: contact your reviewer nominees ahead of time. And this benefits not only you and the reviewer, but it benefits me as well. The trick here is to identify who you're going to ask to review and give an honest assessment of your draft through the Fast Track system, and contact them ahead of time and say, hey, I have this extension brief we'd like you to take a look at, and can you do it within our time limits, which is generally 21 days. If the person says yes, share that information with me. I'll send them the invitation through Fast Track. Now, occasionally, as is known to happen with things electronic, either the email never gets to them, or it gets routed as spam, or they don't know who I am, and so they immediately ignore it. It happens. Letting the individual know ahead of time that they're going to be receiving that invitation is a great way for them to know what to look for. Also, one of the things you end up doing by asking them is making sure that they are available. They may say, I would love to share some feedback about your draft publication, but I'm on sabbatical this semester, I'm teaching on campus this year, I'm up to my eyeballs in programming, or I just retired. Any of these may get in the way of them doing what you'd like them to do. So it never hurts to have more than one nominee in mind. So basically, contact them ahead of time. Don't surprise them with a request that they can't fulfill. Because all of this works on a timeline, on a continuum, a minimum, absolute minimum of 17 weeks. If you're submitting in the beginning of January, you may not get it published until May. That's if everything goes as planned and everybody hits their deadlines. As I said, we give them 21 days to give their reviews. If everyone sends in their review within 21 days, I wait until all the reviews come in, and then I start editing. I give suggestions and comments and questions, and I send it back to you as the author. You then have 60 days to go through what I've given you as feedback and what your reviewers have given you as feedback. And if you then hit the 60 days, come up to that actual limit and send it back to me, what I then do is compare what you've sent me in the second draft to what you've sent me in the first draft. And I will admit that on occasion, I will look at the two and I'll see something in the first draft that I missed. And then I have to provide that back to you. Or I'll have questions about what you've written in the second draft and I compare them back and I send you back to a third draft. This doesn't have to go through Fast Track. This is usually just done through email. And hopefully we can get them addressed. But again, the timeline keeps moving on. We're now past the 3 weeks, the month it may take for me to get it done, depending on where it comes in the timeline, and the 60 days. And then when all of that's done and we're all set and we're all happy and the draft is wonderfully crafted and ready to go, it then goes over to Susan Barnes. And she does her magic with the publications end. She does the formatting, she works with graphics, she works with keywords, she works with making it ADA accessible. She works with you if you're doing a curriculum to make part of it accessible and the rest available for download through a particular link. That's all part of her magic. So it's a typical timeline that may take 17 weeks. Please make sure when you're planning to submit something to UME into Fast Track that you look ahead. If you have a workshop scheduled for August, please don't wait until July to submit a document for me to publish to be shared at that workshop. It's not going to happen unless it's something very short and you already have the reviews set and the people are ready to go, bing, bang, boom. It can be done. That's why I didn't want to do these in red, but I will say that it's going to be hard pressed to do so. And if you're coming up for a tenure and promotion meeting in July or June, here we are almost at the end of March. It's almost too late to submit something to get in and published for your CV. That's why I said I did these in orange. It's not always the case, but it's almost the case. And please, when you're doing all of this, don't leave the team hanging. Now, I recognize that everyone's busy. I recognize that priorities change. You're bringing on new staff or staff leaves and you have other priorities shifting. But if you've gone through the effort of submitting something to Fast Track and you've gone through the effort of having the reviewers and the reviewers have gone through their effort to give you their feedback, and I've gone through my effort to let you know what I believe should be done with the draft, questions and comments and feedback and so on, and suggestions. And I send it back to you and I say, now you've got 60 days and I don't hear from you. Well, I'll reach out and say, okay, we don't have hard and fast deadlines, but how are you doing with this? And if you write back to me and say, hey, I'm sorry, I've been on sick leave or I've got new programming to deal with, that's fine. Just keep me in the loop. If I don't hear from you, you're going to leave me hanging, and I'm going to wonder how committed you are to this particular draft publication. So what's next? You've cut your teeth with some articles with an extension newsletter. You now have a couple of fact sheets, maybe a lesson plan as part of a curriculum under your belt. What's next? Professional articles. And many of what you heard from Deb, you're going to hear from a professional journal editor. It's going to be a different brand of writing. They're going to generally have an in-house style that they want you to write to. The only thing we have mostly is APA style for in-text and references, scientific references. We're not real fussy about whether you want to write to Chicago or AP style. We do have a few things that we have in mind. But from a professional journal standpoint, as a professional journal editor, there's going to be a more strenuous peer review, for one thing. And it's going to be a blind peer review. They will basically ask you to send in a clear copy of your work that takes out all references to names and places and affiliations. And they'll select the reviewer from their in-house stable of people. And because they have established deadlines for publication, they're going to say, if you want it in this issue, then it has to be edited by this date and it has to be submitted by that date. And they're going to keep you to it. It's going to be very strenuous in that regard. We're much more flexible when it comes to UME, fast track articles, fast track publications. From a professional standpoint, that's generally not going to be the case. Now, in the couple of minutes I have left, my clock just chimed behind me. Let me share a few words about editing, tell you a little bit about some of the things I do. Now, it is not unusual for me to have an author say to me, I'm really comfortable with writing, but I'm not so comfortable at editing my own work. And frankly, that is a separate style. It's a separate technique. And it can be a challenge. Now, we see this tagline all across campus, fearlessly forward. You see it everywhere. Let me invite you to be fearlessly ruthless when it comes to editing your own writing. This is a writing exercise that was given to me years ago by an instructor, writing instructor. It's an actual letter written by a registrar to the student newspaper at a university. I won't say where. Basically addressing complaints from the student body about class registration. And the question was, what is the registrar's office doing to address it? And the registrar goes on and on and on and on. And if I get something like this from you, I'm going to ask you to be fearlessly ruthless and take another shot at editing it. And if you're uncomfortable with doing that, reach out to a colleague, reach out to a friend who knows a little bit about the subject, because you never know, you might be able to get something like this into something that's a little closer to acceptable length, or you might get it down to something like this. Bing, bang, boom, we are on it. We know it's a problem. So I'm just about out of time, but I do want to say a couple of things before I toss things back to Deb. If you have any questions about the publication process at any point, even if you're just considering something, reach out to me. This is a part-time gig for UME, so I work from home. Email is always the best way to reach me, akling1@umd.edu. I'm happy to spend some time chatting with you about particular things. If you have questions about a particular topic, has somebody dealt with this before, or this is based on another thing. One of the things we've had recently is someone said, we want to update some fact sheets that were written many, many years ago. How do we do it? Well, are you really changing the content? Is it an update or is it a new publication? And we can talk about that as well. So let me stop sharing my screen and toss things back to Deb.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andrew. That was wonderful. and very methodical presentation, I must say. So thanks a lot. And now we're moving on. We will have first Amanda talking to us about abstract publications. Amanda, over to you.
Hi, yes, thank you. Let me share this really quick. All right, does that look okay, or do I need to swap them?
Yep. I think
Okay,
it,
perfect.
yeah.
So I was asked to give kind of some examples of peer-reviewed abstracts and just talk about kind of my experience with submitting peer-reviewed abstracts. So for those who don't know me, my name is Amanda Grev. I'm the forage specialist for University of Maryland. So I'm based at the Western Maryland Research and Education Center, but I kind of hop all across the state, focusing on forage, pasture, things that that working with livestock a lot. So as far as peer-reviewed abstracts go, so kind of like Deb said earlier, these are meant to be a really short summary of a research, or could also be some sort of educational project. So it's really important to adhere to the limits there, and sometimes can be hard to fit a lot of information into a short amount of time or a short length. But like Andrew just said, sometimes we have to be ruthless with ourselves and ask what's really important to include. In my experience, at least for the abstracts that I've submitted, they're typically limited to somewhere between 200 and 300 words, or 2,000 to 2,300 characters, but that will differ depending on who or what you're submitting it to. So just make sure you know what the limit is. What is included, Deb mentioned, title, authors, background, objective, methods, results, conclusion, and keywords, which is a lot to fit into that short amount of time. Sometimes you are permitted to include one table. I'll show an example in a second of an abstract that had a table included in it. And then one other thing that I think is important to mention for abstracts is these can be submitted and presented on prior to the completion of a study. So if you have a multi-year study going on and you have results from, say, the first year, you can do an abstract and present kind of preliminary results or what you're finding as a first year. So this can give you a much quicker turnaround time compared to having to wait till the whole study is done and do the full journal article. So here's just a few examples I wanted to walk through. I'm not really expecting you to kind of read all of this, but these are just a few examples of abstracts that I have submitted in the last few years to some different organizations or conferences. This one was submitted to the Animal Science National Meeting for the American Association of Animal Science, based on a project that we did. And I wanted to kind of walk through all of those different parts. So this is the full length of the abstract. You can see they're quite short, but it does include all of those different components that we talked about. So starting with the title, of course, you want to have a nice concise title that's going to hopefully capture the key of your project and draw people into your reading your abstract or coming to your presentation. Authors, of course, are also important to be included. We need to make sure we have notice of authors, and then also the affiliation of those authors will also be in there. Background. So it's hard to, in an abstract, put in a lot of background. You don't have much space, right? So for this example, the background is literally one sentence. Energy is often the most limiting nutrient in pasture diets. So this is what what we mean when you really have to be concise. You want to provide a little bit of context for the study, but you really do have to be kind of concise about it. Objectives. So usually this is kind of one sentence as well. In this case, the effect of energy supplementation on the growth, health, and carcass traits of pasture-raised lambs was investigated. So again, short, concise, objective statement. Methods usually is one of two things that kind of takes up the bulk of the abstract. So for your methods, you want to make sure to include all the pertinent information for that study, but again, in a brief amount of a brief way. So you can see, I'm not going to read this section, but this is the methods section of this abstract. And you can see that, there is a lot of detail in there, but it is also very concise. So really be thinking about what is needed for the reader to know to understand this project. Most abstracts, if it's a research project, or if there's statistics that can be done on the project, will include some sort of statement on the statistics or the analytical methods that were used. We like to be clear with, statistical analysis on things and what type of analysis we're doing. So usually there's some sort of sentence describing the stats on the project. And then results is the other kind of big one. So methods and results really make up kind of the bulk of an abstract. So you can see here some of the results examples. Generally, it's usually recommended or sometimes even required to include those p-values. So showing again that statistical analysis as part of your results. And here's where you really have to be brief. You probably aren't going to be able to fit all of the results for your whole study, but it's really important to kind of focus in on key points that you think are really essential, or key points that you want to convey with the project. Usually if there's space, we try to include kind of a short conclusion or kind of summary at the end. So you can see in this one, the value of the additional gain, at least in that year, would not have covered the cost of feed for the lambs. However, there were some extra health instances from one of the groups, so kind of showing kind of a summary of the study. And then I mentioned that these are sometimes preliminary, right? So this abstract was actually presented after 1 year of a 2-year project. So we noted that the study was going to be repeated the following year, and that these, were our preliminary results from the first year only. And then of course at the bottom, we have keywords. Usually, what in my experience, tips for keywords, oftentimes in a Google search, the title will be kind of included in the keywords as well as the keywords themselves. So sometimes words in the title can also kind of be used as keywords, and you may want to choose different words that aren't in the title. For example, in this one, average daily gain was not in the title, but we included that in the keywords. So that's just one example. I'm not going to go through this one, but this is just another example submitted to a different group. This was for the dairy science meeting, and I just threw this one up there because you can see that there was a table included in this one. So sometimes it can be helpful to include a simple table. For this one, the table was included to basically help show the treatments. So rather than having to write out all the different treatments and all the different rates of nitrogen and sulfur in this case that were used for those treatments, we just said that the treatments were defined in table 1 and put in a simple table to really help kind of clearly and easily convey that. So sometimes there can be usefulness of a table, but again, they do need to be kind of simple and straightforward. And then the third example that I wanted to throw up there was one that's focused a little bit less on a research study and a little bit more on kind of an educational project. So we can do peer-reviewed abstracts for actual research projects, but you can also do peer-reviewed abstracts that are focused more on the extension or the education side, especially if that makes up a huge portion of your job. So this is an example of one that actually hasn't been presented yet, but it's been accepted for presentation this coming summer at the Equine Science Society conference. And this one was focused more on some pasture walks and some education that was done, and kind of a summary of some survey responses and feedback that was gathered as a result of that. So you can see this one actually does not have a true statistical analysis. It has some numbers, some percentages listed in there, but it's focused more on the education side of things. So that is an option. A lot of conferences do have, or at least some conferences do have, kind of an educational tract sometimes, where it's kind of focused on education or things around that. So that can be an option as well if you don't have a research project or data to present. And then my last thing I wanted to mention was just a couple of quick benefits and tips. So like I mentioned, abstracts can be a really good way to share research results before a study is complete. So you can share some preliminary data. You can also learn from others who are presenting at the conference and get a feel for what others are working on and hear about some preliminary results from other universities. It does give you some experience with scientific writing in a shorter form, so a short and concise way to kind of practice with some scientific writing. The experience of going to and presenting at a conference is of course very beneficial. So every abstract will usually be combined with either a poster or a oral presentation. So, you know, regardless of which you are presenting as, it's a good way to kind of work on your public speaking skills in addition to your writing skills. And then some journals actually publish an edition or a supplement edition with the abstracts that are available as a published journal. So the Equine Science Journal, every year that there's an Equine Science Conference, the May edition is all the abstracts from the Equine Science Society. So these are published works, and of course they are peer-reviewed. And then lastly, tips, like I said, kind of keep it short and concise. Make sure you follow all the required guidelines and timelines. So usually there will be some sort of document or tip or, you know, explanation for authors on what is required to include in that abstract. Make sure you read that and make sure you go through that and are including all of the things that are required. It really helps save time on the reviewer side of things if you don't have to be kicking back, you know, abstracts to add all of the different things that are required. And then along those same lines, focus on the most important points of the project. So you may not be able to include everything that you want to include, but it's really meant to be a short summary. So focus on the key things that you want people to glean from your abstract and take it from there. So that was everything that I had. I'm not sure. I think we're doing maybe some questions at the end. So I just threw my contact information up there, but I'll be sticking around and I'm happy to answer questions at the end if there are any.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amanda. It's beautiful and very important to show different types of abstract that you did. So thank you so much for that.
Of course.
And now, yeah, moving on, we have Jennifer. So Jennifer, would you like me to share your slides?
I think it's working on my end, so I'm going to try to do it from my end.
Okay.
Initially, I was having some issues with bringing it up.
Okay.
Are you able to see it?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. Hello everyone, I'm Jennifer Dixon Cravens. I'm at the University of Maryland Extension. I'm a faculty extension FCS and nutrition educator located here in Hartford County. My topic for today is my personal experience with fact sheets. Some of the information I'm going to move through because it was spoke about earlier. But some of the tips that I just want to share off the top, fact sheets are, we have to remember that they are a communication tool, which is really important for educators to share and display information so that the program participants can better understand the health and nutrition information that we're trying to provide, and also to make the material more digestible for the reader, because a lot of times when I'm out in the community and I'm speaking on certain topics, a lot of the program participants may not get the concept or understand the position that we're taking when it relates to chronic disease. So if you have something to hand to them that they may be able to refer back to or go onto the website to pull up at a later date so that they can research it a little bit more or have a better understanding of the nutrition education that we're trying to provide. The fast track process, this is just some from the website. You want to choose your reviewers in a timely manner. I had chosen reviewers for my fact sheet, and COVID happened, and when I circled back to actually get the person to sign up again, they had retired or they were no longer reviewing documents, so I had to start the process all over again. So you always want to alert your reviewers that the fact sheet is going through the fast track, this is our timeline, and kind of keep them in the loop because their life situation may change, and then have backup reviewers. So what I had to do was go and locate other reviewers to replace the two that were no longer available. And sign up for Facts Track and follow the instructions. Go to the website and see the process and go into the queue and start your process. Publication process, I'm going to skip over that because it was talked about earlier. And this is the fact sheet online steps. I wanted to make a distinction between the extension brief, the fact sheets, and the information sheet. When I first started with the university, I came with a lot of fact sheets that I had did at another university, that I had did during my internship time when I was going through my dietetic training. And so we would always have handouts for health fairs, lessons, PowerPoint summaries, and different things like that. So I had a lot of information sheets, but I wasn't aware of like the fast track process as it relates to transfer my information sheets into fact sheets. So I had to change the title of about 20 documents to reflect that they were just information sheets and handouts. So this was very important for me to take some of my information sheets through the fact sheet process. And then just the difference between an extension brief and a fact sheet and an information sheet. A lot of times when we present or we go to a function or a health fair, people will come to the desk and they want some type of takeaway. And so a fact sheet is a unique opportunity to expand the knowledge of our program participants. And I look forward to turning some of my other information sheets into fact sheets. Fact sheets should consist of a title, introduction, body, and references. So those are just basic approaches to the fact sheet. Tips to consider when creating. You want to define the goal of the fact sheet and the purpose to yourself first. Why do I feel like this fact sheet is an important or relevant or timely topic? And what's the purpose that I want to communicate to the public as it relates to this fact sheet? You also want to define who is your target audience, who will benefit from this fact sheet. Is it more for my peers, or it's for my program participants? Is it for the general population? Is it just for the academic community? So that is important when you're thinking about doing a fact sheet. You want to keep it brief and concise and consistent with the voice. Someone mentioned being consistent with the voice and putting out information that's consistent. Make it relevant and also timely. A lot of times information becomes outdated really quick in the nutrition community, so we want to make sure that it's a topic that's relevant and timely. I think my fact sheet is stuck, so I apologize. I'll keep talking until it moves. I have a fact sheet. I put a copy of the fact sheet in the chat. And if you go to the chat, you can click on the fact sheet and see it. I'm not sure if it's there. I've been having technical issues, so let me try to move forward. Okay, the PowerPoint is stuck, but if you look in the chat, you see the fact sheet that's there. I'm going to click on it and just go into it. The fact sheet topic was healthy eating with the Mediterranean diet. This fact sheet was co-authored with Drudy Patel, who is an FCS educator now in Prince George's County. We went with this topic because it was relevant. When I go out to speak, a lot of times I'm asked why did you choose, I mean, what do you eat on a day-to-day? Because we're nutritionists and dietitians, and we're promoting healthy eating and healthy lifestyles, but a lot of times people want to know, well, what do you eat on a day-to-day, to make it more practical and more feasible for them to be able to follow the different diet programs that we're promoting. So the Mediterranean diet has been like in the news a lot. You have several books written about it and based on it. And so the topic being the Mediterranean diet was one of the up and coming diets to promote disease prevention and address health disparities, because it was one of the eating patterns that people could utilize that was not very restricted. And for whatever reason, my PowerPoint is not moving. So the point that I wanted to make in conclusion, fact sheets can help educators promote nutrition and wellness education that address healthy eating and help the audience better understand the benefits of healthy eating and living. It can also assist them with making better choices and to properly manage and prevent chronic diseases, and to also address health disparities that we may have in the community. I know my motivation for doing fact sheets and sharing my process, it took my fact sheet about 16 months to go through the process, because it happened during the COVID process and we didn't have someone on hand to kind of move the document forward. Once we got someone assigned to the position, it moved through the process very quickly and timely. I had additional reviewers that were added, and then it was sent back for us to make corrections to put it in a different format, and then it was updated online with a different format to make it more accessible online. So it was a unique experience and process in terms of being able to get educational material through the system. And that's about all I have for that, but I'd recommend all educators putting information out there, because when I go out in the community, the first thing they want is some type of handout. They always want a copy of a PowerPoint when you do the presentation. I feel like that's a lot of information to give to people. So if you have a fact sheet, it's a introduction to a certain topic, it's relevant, it's timely, it's peer reviewed, and it just makes the information that you're trying to share more accessible and easier for the program participant to understand. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jen. I'm sorry about these technical difficulties, but you did a brilliant presentation, and thank you so much for enlightening us.
You're welcome.
Would you mind, closing your slideshow?
Okay. Now it works. Okay.
So now it's over to Kathy.
Jennifer, can you mute so we can hear together?
Yes.
Come on.
Jennifer, can you stop sharing the screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, I also have some technical difficulty.
So Kathy, if you share your PowerPoint first, I mean, if you bring up your PowerPoint, then it might be easier to share that view. Or just make sure you share the other screen.
It works earlier, sorry for that.
No worries. Kathy, we see your folder.
You still cannot see my slides?
No, we see your folder. You can open the PowerPoint and then share that one. Yeah, perfect.
Is that right now?
Yes.
Looks beautiful.
Mhm.
Hello, everyone. Sorry for the disturbance. My name is Kathy Liu. I am a seafood technology specialist at the UME. My office is actually housed at the UMES campus. I have working all my career working on seafood. So all I talk from now, it's from my experience. So the example I will show also working on seafood. So this is my 9th year of working for the UME. Before to this position, I had worked for 20 years in China as a lecturer, associate professor, and a professor. So I have probably have more general article publication than many of our extension folks. So I'm focused on the general article. I would like to share my personal experience to talk about the journal article. So this is, I like to brief talk about what type of journal article. I will show you several of journal article as example and talk about why we need to consider published in peer-reviewed journal, and also share some tips to get published in academia journal. As you know, publishing in a journal article as peer review original article is kind of competitive. So even though we know our extension folks is not required to publish a peer reviewed journal article, I was told, but if you are faculty, especially you are tenure faculty, it's better you have some kind of publication in a general article format. So these are the article published in, published before. So the next one is an original article, and the right one is a review article in peer-reviewed journal. And there are also some other type of journal article. It depends on different journal. So this is another example. It calls a short communication. Sometimes it says research notes. It's basically, it's a shorter version of an original journal article. So in addition, there are also have case study or methodology or method type of article you can publish in a peer-reviewed journal. When you have work can contribute to a new concept or about advanced in a technology or scientific field, you may consider publishing an original article in a peer-reviewed journal. If you would like to summarize original studies in a particular field and provide a direction to researcher or scientific community by outlining the profession of research in that field, then you may consider publishing a review article in the journal. So among those different types, as a researcher, the original article is probably most common type So I will talk a little bit on this, but I am afraid to click the link. If I have time, I will click, show you some example of original article, how it detail. And so why we want to consider publish your work in a journal, peer-reviewed journal article. Before going to that, so how many academic journal you can see the number is very large. This table just show the top 4 of the academic publisher. So there are over 10,000 journals to cover different research field. So any of our topic, our research can find right art journal to be published. So here I list the several of the reason why we should consider published journal article. So the first one is if you publish your work in academic journal, it's actually a better disseminate your research result to scientific or technology community. So it's actually a little bit different from what Andrew talk and Amanda and Jennifer talk for. If that is extension publication, the audience is different. So for the journal article, the audience is more focused on science and technology community. So the second reason is the journal article actually can help you gain better recognition in an academic field, nationally and internationally. I like to show you how widely can be recognized through the Google Scholar. I will show you the Google Scholar later after my presentation, in case the click the link mix up the presentation. So the third reason is help establish your academic reputation as an expert in your field. And finally, maybe this is a very important component. It's help advance your career as you are considered for academic appointment and promotion. So those are the reason why we need to consider publish your work in journal article. If you can consider one or more reason, yeah, we can. If I really hope we can have additional time to talk about the journal article preparation. If we have chance, if there is need, I will be happy to talk more about that. So publishing in a peer-reviewed journal is very important and competitive. So what are the tips from myself and also from some of the editor? I have been author and reviewer, and also I'm also serving on 2 journal editorial board. One of them, I am actually one of the receiving editor. So before you actually begin to write your article, you'd better to ask this question. Have you done something new is there anything challenging in your work, or will your result influence other researcher? Have you provided solution to some difficult problem? So those are the question, common question you ask yourself before you begin writing. If you can answer those questions is yes to some or all of them, then it's a time you can consider to share your research and start preparation of your manuscript. And I also have the website to recommend. If you have chance, you can look additional information. So after you decided you want to write a journal article, then the first step is actually pick the right journal is very important, and also carefully read the guide for authors. As I share, there are more than 10,000 journals. Which journal is fit for your work? So your work needs to be within the scope of the journal. Otherwise, it will be rejected immediately, even without any chance for peer review. The editor will just send you back, say, sorry, your manuscript is rejected because it's out of their scope of journal. And consider a journal. You will also consider how quickly you want to see your paper published. Usually the journal have the information how many days or how many months average on their website. So if you want to get your paper published, for example, in June or August, you submit it now, if that is the average time frame, but it may go longer actually, but that at least you know, that is possible. And also now there is a trend, open access. Do you like to go open access or not? Because there are some disadvantage and for open access, and also some advantage for open access. If you have enough funding, you may go to open access, because open access basically you pay all the fee, so the reader will not pay. For in the traditional journal, you don't need to pay the fee for publication, but the reader need to pay for reading your paper. Basically, the university buys that journal, and we have access to that journal. So basically, the publisher have to get some access fee so that we can access. But for open access journal, we have already paid, then it's free. It's if you Google Scholar, then you can get that full article as free. And
sorry for the interruption. Would you mind winding up?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And so this is every journal has the guide for the author. So if you choose the journal, then you need to read all the author's guidance. So additional tips during writing stage and the submission stage, even after the submission, usually you probably will need to go through at least one time revision, and the reviewer provide you the feedback, and then you need to revise your article based on the reviewer's comments. There are some technique to deal with the feedback. I also provide the link here so that you can get more detailed information how to get your paper be published. And there are another additional tips can be found from this website. It's all from their publisher. So if you follow those tips, then you have a higher chance get your paper published. So that's is what I like to share. And since time is limited, if I have chance, then I can do the website later. I will just move this to next speaker first. If we have chance, we can discuss it later. You can also directly reach me. You're welcome to send me email and also call me. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kathy. Yeah, we will see if we have more time, we can go for that. And now let's move the agenda and then invite Vernell to share her perspective. Vernell, do you want me to share your slides?
I'm going to be confident that I can do this, Deb.
Okay.
You got this.
Well, first of all, good morning, everyone. My name is Vernell Mitchell-Hawkins. And I am an extension educator in Baltimore County with 4-H. And so let's get started. You guys have received a lot of information today. And so hopefully I'll be able to share a little bit more. So I'm going to be giving a review of an extension document, a fact sheet that was published last year called Educational Planning Tools and Methods for Extension Educators. And at the end, I'll put the link in if anybody's interested in taking a look at it. And so this fact sheet was actually intended to help extension educators. So there are different audiences. Andrew did a great job earlier sharing that information. So this one is specifically designed for educators to help them prepare for teaching. We all are busy. We all have 1,000 things to do in every single day. So this fact sheet is to be able to give us kind of like a grab and go way to do things. And it really comes in and plays into the assumption that adults and youth come to our workshops, they come to our seminars with mixed levels of prior knowledge, prior skills, prior interests. So we have to, as educators, be able to understand all that and then still engage everybody where they are and bring them to that next level. So this document, this fact sheet, it talks about the major components of educational planning. There are actually 2 parts. The first part kind of introduces the components of educational planning and gives some strategies that any educator in extension, regardless of program, can use to help them create or adapt learning materials. And there are also some helpful worksheets towards the end that can help educators to guide that planning process. So on this slide, I'm showing you one of the appendices, and this is a youth planning tool. And it includes, this is actually based on a prior fact sheet written by Dr. Nia Fields in reference to what are the main parts that are needed for a complete lesson plan for youth development. So those pieces are in there. And it also pairs with the 5E model, which is commonly used for youth education. But so definitely materials are listed there. What are the learning objectives? What do we want them to learn? It's also connected to our Maryland 4-H youth priority needs. What are the different levels in our process? How are we going to engage them, explore? How are we going to evaluate what they learned? If time runs out, then what? There's a piece in there for that. And then there's a reflection piece. The next one is an adult planning tool. And there are actually 2 templates in there. One, this one we see on the left, is to help us when we're planning out a whole course. I feel like they called them short courses at one time. So this is kind of helps us to plan out, okay, in the big scheme of things, what needs to go where, what are my major outcomes? And then there's definitely instructor notes. Here's some things I need to make sure I pack, make sure I have this. And then there's this autopsy reflection piece at the end, just to kind of give that educator a moment or two to kind of reflect and see what happened. And then the other one on the right-hand side is for individual seminars or workshops. And it kind of goes through a little bit more time block by time block to help us to plan what we need to be doing at each step so we don't leave anything out. These tools are important because this one in particular is because it will save us time in the long run. So, this time, 6 months from now, someone invites us to teach that lesson on rain barrels. I'm just going to grab that one off the shelf. That I can literally just run, grab it. It's already written. I already know what I need. The materials list is already there. I can grab it and go. If something happens and I can't teach that rain barrel workshop, another educator can just grab that piece of paper. Everything's listed. They can grab and go. UME publications, when I first started, I was told that the purpose of publishing is to add to the body of scholarly knowledge. And one important thing for everyone to know is that everyone has something to add. Everyone comes into this field with their own prior experiences and prior things that they are really good at. So everyone has something to add to the body of knowledge. And UME Publications really gives us that opportunity to do that, and especially to offer help and support to colleagues with this type of document, but then also to the general public with the type of fact sheets that Jennifer mentioned. So what do you do now? We've looked at these things, we've talked about it. This will be my little 4 steps, and that is, number 1, organize your thoughts. What do you want to say? Put them in an outline. Then you fill in your outline. I kind of feel like it's like a skeleton, right? Your outline is your skeleton. Then you're going to fill in your meat and your muscles and your skin, and you're going to support that with citations. The citations will kind of be your skin to hold it all together. And then invest in a style guide. Don't depend on these online websites to get it for you. Go ahead and purchase that style guide and mark it up and make it your friend. Be patient and persist would be the last thing I would share. And that is, be patient in waiting for the reviewers to get back to you, or be patient and waiting for the reviewer to even say they'll do it. But then when you get those your reviews back, and Andrew's office responds back, persist. Go do it. Go do it. Don't just say, oh, there's too many red marks here. No, keep going. It's going to be well worth it. So I just wanted to leave you all with something, that you can use, and then a little bit of a encouragement. And then in the chat, I have the fact sheet link, and there it is if anyone is interested. Thank you very much for your time. Deb, I'll throw it back to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Vernell. It's so beautifully done. And grab and go, I really like that concept. So thank you for sharing that with us. So now it's over to Razan. Do you want to share your screen, Razan, or you want me to?
I'll share it.
Okay.
It's only one slide.
Okay.
So I'm going to be very brief. Can you see it?
Awesome.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
Perfect. So we talked about all the great, kinds of publications. And now I just wanted to talk to you about attending a conference. So why attend the conference? Sometimes, we might attend a conference just as an attendee, and sometimes we might have something to present. I'm going to share some of my little experience, and then, open it up for questions, since I'm the last person presenting. So again, my name is Razan Sahuri, and I am a nutrition educator with Maryland SNAP Ed, based in Howard County. The first thing we think about when we talk about conferences is basically why. Why should I attend? Of course, the first thing that comes to mind is expanding your knowledge, your expertise, improving on skills you have, promoting deeper understanding of your field. And then you can uncover new learnings. So for example, I'm trained as a dietitian. I'm a dietitian. And when I started this job, I didn't have any skills, let's say, that have to do with an educator. So basically participating in those conferences, they provided me with tips, tricks, tools to have. So when I'm in the classroom, I can convey my messages as an educator in a more effective way. So sometimes, you might have some skills that are missing, and attending those conferences might actually help you gain those skills. And then there's different ways you can get those, as some of them mentioned. There's, the workshops. So for example, in a workshop setting in a conference, the learning is intimate. Usually it focuses on one specific thing versus, when it's a bigger, let's say, panel discussion. So if you have one thing that you want to work on, a workshop might be a great thing to attend. And then there's the panel discussions. The nice thing about panel discussions is that it brings together presenters from either different point of views. So you might have, different point of views, or you might have different stakeholders present the same topic. So that also exposes you to fresh ideas. I cannot tell you how many times I had aha moments, just listening to different ideas. And also it gives you opportunities to ask questions. So sometimes by just attending a presentation, your questions might be answered. And that's brilliant, that's great. But also if that's not the case, you can always reach out to the speaker and pick their brain, which is also something that maybe, under normal circumstances, you might not be able to do it, but being at a conference, it provides you with that opportunity to actually ask those questions. So that's the first thing. Other than knowledge, I'm moving to networking, and networking, basically broadening your network, is something that's super helpful. So it goes without saying that large scale events like conferences, basically, they give you the opportunity to expand your network. And depending on what you do, it's easier, sometimes to network in a conference, and not only depend on, the after, sometimes there are some networking hours, but don't just depend on those. If you're a morning person and you don't really need that caffeine in the morning, maybe, first thing in the morning, right before you start, it might be a good opportunity to talk to people, or during lunch when, it's casual and people are just sitting. You can just, grab a seat next to someone and start talking. And of course, attending those networking events. One strange or interesting story happened to me. I was attending a conference in Minnesota, and I sat next to a lady during lunch, and I was telling her about some issues I was having in Howard County. She's a stranger, and I was telling her about some of the issues I was having. And sure enough, she had a contact for me. So it looks like the lady wasn't even from that area. She had previous work in Maryland, so she had contacts. And although she was, I think, in Boston at that point, but she moved on. And what a small world. The lady was able to just, give me an email. And I came back home, I emailed that person, and let me tell you, life got much easier. So just by sitting, and just by coincidence. So you never know, when you sit next to a person, you might be able to either pick their brain, get ideas. If you have an issue, maybe if they were in the same shoes that you were in. So that also helps. And then moving from the why to where, one of the silver linings of the pandemic is conferences now, or a lot of the conferences, are either hybrid or online. So that big world of ours, I feel like, became much smaller. So this poster that you see on the screen, this is a poster presentation that I presented, and it was during the pandemic. And, usually you'll stand next to the poster and people would come, attend, people attending, they'll come and ask you questions. And in the pandemic, since this was online, people were able to actually ask me questions through Twitter. So that was a completely new experience for me. But the nice thing about this experience is usually when I attend conferences, we get fair amount of people participating. But when it was online, we got people from all over the world. So because, usually sometimes traveling is difficult, getting visas to come is difficult. So it was one of the first times where I felt like this entire big world is very small, and people from all over the world have different perspectives. So, the questions, the conversations that I had with them, it was the best conference I've attended. Although I personally prefer being there in person. When you talk to people in person, I feel like it's more engaging, but that was one advantage. So, if you don't have the budget to attend maybe a conference in person, or you have family obligations, consider attending in, an online or a hybrid conference, because that also allows you, to also get the benefits of attending a conference. And a lot of the conferences have apps now. So when you register, you can also network or find people through the app, depending on, the kinds of conferences. But I've seen people. So if you're interested in someone, you can also message them, send them on the app. So that also made it easier. So basically, to conclude, I feel like, attending, before that, let's talk about the where to attend the conference. So there's different types of conferences. There's the smaller conferences, the more intimate ones. There's the bigger ones that have expos. So if you've never been to a conference, maybe you can start with a small one to get to get used to it. Or, if you don't like big crowds, start with a smaller conference, or start with the regional conference where you'll have people that are maybe closer to your geographical area. They might help you. And then maybe go to a bigger one. And I always like to use conferences as a great excuse to travel. So you'll just, visit somewhere new. And the nice thing is, a lot of times the conferences, they host, for example, you can go a trip to the farm, or, visit a garden or something. So you always get to see that new place in a different lens, which is also nice. So, consider that when you're also picking your conference. You get to, travel if you'd like to travel and not do it online. And when you come back, to the office, that next, time you're at the office, I feel like personally for me, it gives me so much energy, because I've had so many new ideas. I've connected with people. It's just so much fun. It gave me, exciting ideas. I'm so enthusiastic, to implement new things. And I feel like it gives me a push. So I feel like that alone is also a great thing to consider. And with that, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Razan. It was beautiful, energetic. I really like all these facts about attending a conference. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So now we will open this for discussion. And I see that Dr. Howard has been doing a wonderful job answering all the questions. But if you guys have anything, we would take it, or we can even ask Kathy to share her perspective, what she was intending to do beforehand. But we'll see if we have some questions first. Please open your mic and share. It's a very small group, and we know everybody, each other. So.
I first just like to Deb and Jeff for the wonderful workshop. I am also learning a lot for the extension publication perspective. As I mentioned, I have much more journal article publication, but I have much less than extension publication, because I have over 20 years before in academic before I joined UME. So it's a wonderful workshop.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kathy, for your kind words. Yeah. So if we do not have any questions, Kathy.
One thing, Deb, I would like to share for those that have not went through the fast track processes, has been deeply streamlined, so it's much manageable, and the timeline has been cut from the way it was previously, so you'll find it user friendly.
Awesome. Thank you. So we have a chat here. What are some helpful tips for selecting a review committee?
I would like to share one thing that I noticed was getting people within your field, FCS educators. So I got people from FCS conferences, And then I followed up with a colleague that had moved to a different university. VG, she was the SNAP educator in the office. She had transferred to become an FCS educator at the University of Florida. And so I reached out to her knowing the shift. So as someone mentioned, when you, Razan mentioned, when you go to conferences to network, so I was able to ask people that I met at conferences to be other reviewers. And then our eternal reviewer, Cheryl Bush, I think she's on the call. She was one of the reviewers. So your peers, because you will need a peer reviewer and 2 outside reviewers. So if you know that you're, whatever topic you're writing on, if you see someone within your network that has the expertise or the skill set, that would be the person you want to connect with. And somebody also put in the chat about don't select your friends, select people that will give you critical feedback. So that's very important because you want it to be the best information that you're putting forward to the public.
Awesome. Thank you, Jennifer. Andrew, we have a question for you in the chat. Can you share the criteria of who to look for in a reviewer?
As Jennifer was saying, you want to have someone who gives an honest review of what you have. It's tempting in an open peer review process like this to pick your best friends, pick your colleagues, but you really do want to have someone who can look at it and say, this is good, but. And that's why we ask for people to come outside. The criteria that I look for is variety, because it's very easy to come back to the same people over and over and over. And you like to have someone look at your work who hasn't looked at it before. We had an author the other day who shared an email that, copied me on an email to someone she never knew, someone she had learned about in the literature. She'd seen her work in the same arena, and just reached out and said, hi, we've never met, but, would you be interested in doing this? And take that leap. Go ahead. You never know. The worst you can have is someone say, sorry, but I can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's good to have alternatives.
That's right. Thank you, Andrew. Any other questions?
May I take 1 minute if I can
Sure,
show
please.
you?
Go ahead.
Just,
Yes.
Can you see the screen now?
Yes.
This is actually also response to Jeff's comment. Thank you, Jeff. You are talking about the national and the international reputation. I will just show you, if you publish your paper in a peer review journal, your paper will be shown on the Google Scholar. So I will just show you, put my name. So you can see those are the paper I published. You can get how many citations each paper you get. And these are the list. And also for the Google Scholar, you can actually create a profile. So then you can get it very quick to the summary of your publication. And so this is just take 1 minute to get this go through. Then you will see how it looks like if you have multiple peer review journals. So this is the profile. The Google Scholar will create it for you automatically. So you can see those are all the paper published under my name. So which year, which paper, and how many citation. And also here is overview citation, the total number since 2018, and also which year, how many article has been cited nationally and internationally. So this is peer review journal have a wonderful function to make you outstand, to make you national and internationally known by the scientific community. So that is what I like to emphasize the national and international reputation establishment through the peer review journal. If you are going to principal or agent or whatever promotion, you need to show your national and international reputation. So that is just the example. Thank you, Deb.
Awesome. Very brilliantly done. Thank you so much, Kathy. Yeah. So we are almost time. If you don't have any questions, we probably would conclude this session, and we will share you the recordings with the whole extension. There is quite a bit of demand that has come through. Like, we are not going to be around, but we need the recordings. So we are going to make that available to everybody. And as you all see the whole co-presenters here, you can reach out to any one of us, and if you have any questions anytime. So thank you very much, guys, for joining.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Deb. You did an excellent job.
Yes.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
I
Have a great
agree.
day, everyone.